Hello again. This afternoon we're thinking about some of the basics of lawn care. It's early spring and people are starting to mow their lawns again. There's actually mowers going in the background at the moment. All sorts of people are out in their gardens mowing their lawns. Lots of us find when we first start mowing our lawns that we have quite a few problems with the grass. Things have developed over the winter that we're really not happy about. Now, I just want to talk about a few of the things that might be happening to the lawn and the ways in which we can deal with those problems. These are just my opinions, the sort of things that I do on my lawn. Early in the year, one of the problems that I have on my lawn is a build-up of moss and thatch, old dead grass. And it really affects the lawn quite badly and it makes it very soft and spongy. Now, there are different ways that we can deal with this. One of the best ways is to try to rake out the moss and the old grass, the thatch, the weeds, all the rubbish that's developing in the grass. When we're thinking about raking it out, we can use a rake such as that, sort of grass rake. The one that I personally prefer to use is a rake such as this. This is a specialist rake for raking out moss. This particular one I think came from Harrod Horticultural, but you can buy these from garden centres, online, all sorts of different places. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to work on some of the grass here, trying to rake out some of the moss and rake out some of the thatch, just to see what the grass is like. I tend to go from one side to another. I don't always rake it in the same direction. But we can see already, just doing it a few seconds, that we're already getting an enormous amount of moss and dead grass out of the lawn. Okay, so this particular tool, this particular rake, is very, very effective indeed. It's very strong, it's very sharp, and it soon deals with that sort of issue. So if you have a smallish lawn, then I would heartily recommend that you do something like this, that you are trying to scarify, that you're trying to rake the moss and the various materials out of the lawn that shouldn't be there. Obviously, if you have a big lawn, then it's really not practical. It would take far too long. So if you have a bigger lawn, I would recommend that you probably hire a scarifier from a tool hire shop, or maybe use a lawn treatment company. There are lots of lawn treatment companies these days, and they have all the sort of specialist equipment that you would need, and they will deal with your problems with your grass for you. Okay, so that's the first thing that I wanted to talk about then. The build-up of the moss and various things and how we can treat it. Now, if we do have a lot of moss developing, growing in our lawn, it's probably because there is an issue with the aeration of the lawn and the compaction of the ground underneath. I just want to talk a little bit about this for a moment. So in this lawn here, where we've got all this horrible material, all this moss building up, it's probably building up because the ground is compacted underneath and it's very sort of wet. And so we need to let the air in. Now, if we've got a fairly small lawn, the easiest way to do this, the simplest way to do this, is to aerate the grass by just sinking the fork into the grass and moving it around a few times, and then choosing another position fairly close to it. And again, just working the fork in, loosening it up, trying to break up the really compacted layer that there is just underneath the grass, trying to allow the air in. This will improve the drainage and it will help deal with moss and other issues. So we can see already that that's made a tremendous difference. The air is getting in, it's been loosened up, it's going to be much better drained. To finish off the job, I often actually put sand or horticultural grit or a mixture of the two into the holes. So I might just simply sprinkle the sand into the holes or put the horticultural grit into the hole. There's different ways that this can be done. Whichever way you do it, you're just trying to improve the drainage. I tend to actually then brush the sand and the grit into those holes that I've created, and that will help keep the holes open, and it will help to improve the drainage and the quality of the lawn. So those are the first couple of issues that we've been talking about then, and what I want to move on to now is actually the weeds, and also actually trying to encourage the grass to grow better. One of the best ways of doing this is to use a weed and feed. At garden centres, and again mail order, there are many different types of weed and feed available. It normally comes in granule form, like this, weed and feed granules, and this will kill the weeds, inhibit the weed growth, and it will also encourage the grass to grow as well, because there's a fertiliser element in there as well. Now if you have a small lawn, the easiest way to do it is simply to scatter the weed and feed over the grass, always remembering then if it's very dry weather you will need to actually water the weed and feed in. If you have a small lawn, it's fairly simple just to scatter the weed and feed like that. If you have a larger lawn, then I would recommend that you actually use a spreader. So here we've got a very simple spreader. We put the weed and feed into the top, and we then simply push the spreader, and it's going to be thrown out at the sides. Okay, so it's actually coming out at the sides. So that's using a spreader to distribute our weed and feed. You can see that it's actually coming out there at the sides. You go over the lawn and you spread it. Okay, so a spreader like that, quite inexpensive really. It's quite well worth investing in one of those. It will help you to spread your weed and feed, and it can be used for other things as well during the course of the year. Now at this time of the year, when we've gone through these processes, many of us find that we have got some bare patches in our lawn. Areas where the grass is very thin, or the grass may have gone completely. And so what we're thinking about now then, is how to actually fill up those spaces, those gaps, fill up the bare patches. The easiest way to do this is to buy some lawn seed. You can get lawn seed from garden centres, DIY stores, online. There's all sorts of different lawn seed available. Just simply like that. Now when we're actually putting the lawn seed down, again the easiest way to do it if you're covering a small area is simply to scatter the lawn seed on. But again you can get ways of actually sowing it over bigger areas. Now I'm just scattering that lawn seed there. What I would normally do would be to mix it with topsoil or compost, and I find it much easier to do that. So if I'm doing a reasonable sized area, I would probably use a wheelbarrow, and I would actually mix my lawn seed with topsoil or compost, something like that, before then distributing it over the lawn. April and May and September are ideal times for planting lawn seed, for distributing lawn seed. Those are ideal times for doing this. April or May earlier in the year, September later in the year. If you are putting lawn seed down, then if you are putting grass seed down, then you do need to keep it watered. It's very, very important to keep it watered. It may take a time to germinate, and it won't germinate properly, if at all, if it's not kept watered. So if the weather is dry, then you do need to actually use your watering can or whatever and keep this nicely moist, and then it will germinate, hopefully. When I'm putting lawn seed down, I nearly always use some horticultural fabric put over top to encourage it to germinate and to protect it from the birds. The general sort of horticultural fabric that I've shown you before, you buy it off big rolls, just cut to length, whatever you need. I normally just put some bricks around to hold it down, but you can use pegs as well. But certainly you will get a much better result growing from seed if you do put a fabric down over top of it to keep it nice and warm, to encourage the germination and to try and keep the birds off from having a feast on the seeds. Obviously as well, you could put lawn turf down. I sometimes use turf rather than seed, but that's much more expensive, and I find that the best way of doing it, for me anyway, is to use a general purpose type of lawn seed. If you go to a garden centre or somewhere like that and have a look at the different types of seed, or look online, you can see there are many different types of seeds. Just an ordinary general purpose seed should do very, very well, and hopefully that will then improve your lawn. In a few months' time, your lawn will be looking nice and green and whole again. When it comes to actually cutting your lovely grass, there are many ways in which you can do this. People used to use traditional cylinder mowers, often push cylinder mowers. These days people tend to use rotary mowers more. It really depends on the size of your lawn and what you want to do with your lawn. I personally use a rotary mower like this. It does have a wheel on the back. It does have a roller on the back, so that it will actually give a striped effect. If you simply have wheels, then you don't get your striped effect with one of these rotary mowers. But if you've got a roller on the back, then it will give a striped effect like this one. It's early in the year, and I would cut my grass quite long now. I wouldn't want to cut it short. I never cut my grass short. I think that it looks a lot better if you leave it a little bit longer, particularly if it's during dry weather. If you cut your lawn very short, particularly during dry weather, it really doesn't do it very much good at all. And so leave your grass quite long, and that's the sort of mower that I would recommend if you've got a large lawn. If you've got a smaller lawn, then obviously you wouldn't want to invest in an expensive mower like that. You could have a much smaller mower, even an electric mower, battery operated mower, whatever. Another thing that I think makes a lawn look a lot better is to go around the outside of the lawn with the long handled edging shears. I think this is very important. You can actually make a lawn look a lot better, a lot neater, just by simply going around the outside of it and trimming with the long handled clippers, long handled shears. I think this will really make your lawn look much neater. Okay then, so those are just a few of the basics to get you started earlier in the year. We'll be talking about lawn care in more detail later on, but these are just a few of the basics that you might find helpful earlier in the year. Thank you.